Thank you, Mr. Negrin. I have a couple of quick questions. In page 1 of your testimony, the proposed budget includes $39 million in Class 200 for contracts within the legal department. What is that about? Can you tell me?
So, do I need to say my name?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Mary Stitt.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. So the $39 million for legal services is for criminal defendants that do not have the money to represent themselves. And if our defender's office has a conflict with them.
Pull the mic a little closer to you, please.
And if the defender's office, if there may be a conflict, that's for the counsel to come in and represent them.
So is there any reason it's through the managing director's office?
I think it's really housekeeping, would that be?
Rebecca Reinhart, Budget Director. The $39 million is the Defenders Association contract, and that was moved over to MDO in the fiscal 13 budget when we grouped together the conflict counsel, $8.8 million that Mary mentions that came from the FJD. We wanted to house all of the legal contracts in one place, and MDO made sense to locate them there, and that's why they were moved. So this was in the fiscal 13 budget. The $39 million was moved from finance over to managing directors.
Where was it before?
In finance.
It was all in finance? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I want to talk about the program that happened in the streets department. They're actually doing a pretty good job on alley cleaning and new alley lights and whole 9 yards. And in a couple of meetings in the community, there was this question about accelerating opportunities, particularly as it relates to clearance of alleyways. And I talked about being able to have a significant number of individuals who were currently in the community services program through the courts, and we're actually working with a couple of other agencies to try and come up with a strategy for individuals who have traffic tickets to create a larger pool of community service individuals. But for whatever reason, we weren't able to access those individuals to support the streets department. And I don't know what the specifics were behind it. There was one issue in the earlier conversations about a ratio of one person for every number of community service individuals. Can you talk to me about what the criteria is in terms of being able to have community service people, particularly since the district attorney's office is decriminalizing, so to speak, a number of small offenses such as marijuana possession and the pushes to give people community service. So if we can expand that opportunity, what's the ratio?
Yeah,
is there in fact a ratio?
I can tell you that the only area where I've heard of a ratio of supervisor to participant is when we have folks who are either currently incarcerated or part of a system where they're part of a probation or an ARD, a rehabilitative system, where they need a certain number of supervisor per participant. But that's not driven by us. That's going to be driven by either the prisons themselves or the DA's office, depending on that ratio. When you look at our programs, whether it's Philly Rising or I would imagine even Streets, we accept people who want to get involved, whether they're volunteers or part of programs, in wide numbers. And there's certainly no direct ratio of supervisor per participant that we cap on how we do those things. So I mean, I think that's something I'd be happy to look into, and I think a lot of that is driven by prisons specifically, if they're using ex-offenders or current folks who are incarcerated.
Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to echo the President of Council's sentiments. You guys have worked with us. I mean, and you've done many, I think, with your varying departments, streets, water, L&I, and the like. But some of them that get right down to the nitty-gritty and the quality of life of our neighborhoods are those alleyways and lots that get cleaned. Jerry Eway, or something like that works for you? Yeah, I butchered his name, but he This one gentleman, I go to one of my favorite eateries, which is Jim's Cheesesteak, not to be confused with any other, on 61st and Noble. He was in the line. Gentleman in front of me was asking about a lot to be cleaned. He interrupted, said, "Excuse me, Councilman, if you don't mind, I'd like to help." I'm like, anybody wants to do help, I'm for it. And literally took that case right on the site, right there. He was off, enjoying his day off, and I just want to publicly say thank you. But on top of that, you've done hundreds of alleys. Mr. Conway, I have on speed dial to help us out. And the funny thing, when any of our council people go out in the community, suddenly and mysteriously there is no division between the municipal services building, the second floor, the fourth floor. They just say, you the city, and you need to do X, Y, and Z. So we are partners in that respect, and I want to thank you for that. I want to ask you what I'm going to ask each and every one of your departments. How is the DROP program impacting your workforce, and is there a succession plan to deal with particularly manpower needs, but skill needs in departments where we need craftsmen, ditch diggers, people that can do the services of the city of Philadelphia? I'm pretty much familiar with the fire. I'm pretty much familiar with the police, new classes. But in those other departments, how are we faring?
So I think you heard Rebecca Reinhardt testify to the fact that roughly some number north of 40% of our city employees are going to be leaving us in the next 3 to 5 years. The departments within the managing director's office are slightly lower than that, somewhere around 30%. What we've done to take steps to address that specifically is utilized our Philly Stat Ops model, which is an operational review, whereas part of the HR component of what we look at our staff and develop staffing plans is to identify the key positions in our departments. Now, it's important that we describe what our key positions are. Key positions does not mean your most strategic, most important deputies, leaders, commissioners. Key positions means those key functions that are being done throughout government all the way down. We all know the famous story because we look at them all the time. Somebody goes on vacation. Something stops for two full weeks. That's a huge issue for us. So we're looking at everything from cross-training to identifying those positions where key functions that we rely on every single day, and God forbid somebody gets hit by a bus or leaves us based on drop. What's our plan to continue to do that and do it more efficiently? So in our departments, we've been specifically identifying step number one, what are those key positions and functions across our departments? And then what's our succession plan? What are we doing to cross-train, to develop, to recruit, and attract people who can do those jobs? That's the step that we're in now. And our folks are asked to develop an actual plan that they report on during Philly Stat Ops around, are they at the requisite number of people? Where are they going to be in a year? How do they plan ahead of time? Because we all know that unless you get that right, there's going to be a strong operational impact. And succession planning, I want to be really specific with what it is. And the Center of Excellence is a part of why we're doing all this. This is why we created the Center of Excellence. And I know there's been some questions around the Center of Excellence. Succession planning doesn't just mean that we bring in folks from the outside. Succession planning doesn't just mean that we recruit some of the best talent. That's important. We need to do that. But what we don't do very well is provide for our employees the kind of career ladder here in Philadelphia that they need. So one of the things that people ask me all the time, what are you most surprised about that you've learned in the city of Philadelphia? I've been surprised by the unflinching commitment on the part of our employees who've been here maybe 28, 30 years, and their ability to adapt, to grow, and to be committed to the city for that length of time. I can't keep a job for 4 years, right? I move everywhere, in terms of changing my role. There are people who come here and commit themselves to the city of Philadelphia, and they stay for a reason. They love public service. And those are the folks we have to prepare to equip them with what's your career ladder? What's next for you? How do you develop? How do you grow? That's the essence of the Center of Excellence. It's about organizational development, training, identifying those folks. We all know, and look, we have the confines of the civil service system. Just because you're in the role of two doesn't mean you're ready to be a manager, right? There's a lot of folks, and it happens across city government. You've got folks who pass a test or score within the top two, and we're asking them the very next day to manage their own friends, manage their own employees. That's really difficult for someone who's been there for a while. How do we equip folks? How do we train them and prepare them to lead and manage in a way that helps us be a better city? That's what the Center of Excellence is about.
I applaud those efforts, but I would urge you to consider the pathway from our public schools into our blue-collar opportunities as well. I hear from departments that say, this person or that person's on their way out the door. I don't know what I'm going to do when they leave. They have institutional memory, and their commitment also gave them confidence. So if we could look at our trade schools, work with the SRC, what you're doing in the streets department with those at-risk young men, laudable. But I'd like to see that replicated over the departments, including the gas works, for the people who do excavation, lay pipe, for people who are in the water department, people who are in the streets department. And so if we created those pathways, that is our own stimulus package, and usually in some of the neighborhoods and the populations that but for opportunity like this might wind up running afoul of the system. So I'd like to encourage that search for excellence to include our public schools and our parochial schools. I would be remiss in not saying that. So going down the line, I'm going to ask this question consistently, and hopefully we'll get to the point repetition breeds learning. That I'm going to keep asking it until I get the kind of answers that we need. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Majority Leader, Councilman Matasco is up and the bell did ring.